Hi, Jeff. Welcome to the WeChat Tech podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. Look, Jeff, firstly, for the audience listening, can you give a short intro of who Jeff is?
I'm Jeff. That's who I am. I'm currently Director of Technology and Innovation at a company called Redgate. We make tools to put the DevOps in your database. But my role is really about two things. The first thing is working with the architecture team and trying to make sense of the technology that we've got in use today. And the other side of it is around the innovation. So it's looking at all the technology coming into the wild, working out how we can plug it into our business to make good things happen. And that's me.
Nice, nice. So before we sort of run through, I guess, that side of things and explore that, sort of further, how let's sort of like throw it back to sort of how you got into tech and that side of things. So I guess how and what influenced you to sort of go down that sort of tech route?
I guess I've always been a bit of a nerd and started out with tech. My dad always had an eye for a bargain, and my first computer was recovered from a skip outside my dad's work, and we kind of patched it together with a bit of a soldering iron and sellotape, and I started with that. And then I guess I've always been interested in. I just love the bit with the computer. I can type in a lump of code and get it to do some stuff that I'd rather not do. I guess I've taken that through. So I did all the geeky subjects at school. I went to do computer science at Southampton, which is where I really enjoyed learning programming. I couldn't be bothered to get a job, so I stayed on and did a PhD, which was again on. I did a PhD in recognizing people by the way they walk, which doesn't sound very computery. Um, but it was fun. We pointed cameras at folks. We wrote code and machine learning algorithms to understand how folks work and walk and recognize them. It's always just been fun, right? It's just puzzle solving. And I really enjoy that. And I guess when I entered the world of work, I've worked in small companies, startups, where we're trying to solve a problem, but unfortunately no one gave us any money, so the startup failed. And then I've worked at big companies, which is a different experience altogether, sort of machine grinding on. And then for the last, amazingly, I think it must be about 15 years, I've been at Redgate. And I've really enjoyed that because I still get to solve lots of different types of puzzles. So now it's sort of higher level puzzles than writing code all the time. And I always feel there's something new for me to learn. So I guess that's why I'm in tech. It's fun. If that doesn't make me sound too sad.
I
From
guess with your transition from being hands-on, Jeff, into leadership, was that quite natural for you? A lot of people have to train themselves to be a leader and a mentor and a manager. How was that for you going into that transition?
It was really hard, actually. I guess I used to work at this big enterprise company. Um, I won't name names. I'm sure you could work it out, but they had a bit of a reputation. They had a piranha tank in the lobby, and the whole rationale was, go for the win, get the job done at all costs. And I became a manager in that company, and it was basically work all the hours in the universe ever, make everyone that works for you work all the hours in the universe ever. And over the point of a few years, I went probably a little insane. I was
Mm.
doing well, I keep getting promoted, taking on more responsibility and stuff, but it was just crap. So like that first introduction to management for me was just a really good. If I look back at it and frame it a bit more positively, it was a really good chance to learn exactly what not to do when you're becoming a manager. So at that point, I was a manager. I had like 150 people all over the world. And one day I went to Milton Keynes, which is always a big mistake. You don't want to go to Milton Keynes. It's not the most exciting place in the world. I just remember coming back in the car with my wife and just bursting out crying. I just had enough, right? That kind of toxic culture, that kind of working all the hours, it's not for me. So at that point, I took a step back and I went to write code again. And that was when I joined Redgate. And my experience of management there was really different. I had a boss called Chris who seemed to genuinely care about me. Weird, right? I didn't think people did that in software companies. And I had conversations about how I wanted to grow and how I wanted to develop in the role. And I think it's being in that kind of supportive environment where you build people up rather than bash them down. That helped me understand that, hey, maybe this leadership and management stuff isn't just some kind of Roman slave driver cracking the whip, right? You can do it and still be a nice human. So
I feel like it's very common for companies to throw everyone in sort of in the deep end, I guess, especially when it comes to sort of early management. They just sort of just say like, "Here you go, we expect this," and and they sort of expect the people sort of not to suffer with burnout, and again, sort of like manage it, I guess, probably the best way to say it. But again, that's all the wrong ways of doing it, I guess, like you said. It's but at least you experienced that from early stage, right? And then you sort of incorporated that into how you want it to run now, which is
basically,
a good thing.
sometimes I think you've got to see the exact opposite of what you want to achieve to know what good looks like, right?
Yeah. So going back as well a little bit. So obviously you've been in tech like for a long time, right? 20 plus years.
For highlighting that, I really
Makes you feel old, right?
Calling him old, Jesus. Bloody hell.
be 50 soon. This is not good. This is not
Oh,
easy.
wow.
Yeah.
Not telling me I'm old.
Do you know what though? You can see it from two ways, right? You can see that you've got a lot of experience. So I think that's a good thing, right? So going from that, right? How have you seen like the tech landscape sort of change? I guess from, because obviously it's enhanced and evolved so like drastically, and it still does. Like it's so like evolving. It's so like regularly moving and whatnot. How have you seen it change from sort of, I guess, your early careers when, yeah, probably the massive computers are still a thing, right?
Oh, God almighty.
He's not 80 VSAS. Bloody hell.
Ugh. I guess I used to be one of these people who chase after the new thing, right? I'd go and buy new tech when it came around, and I'd chase the latest. There's a new programming language. I'll go and learn it. But now I guess I've got family. I don't have time to do all of that, and that gives me a chance to take a step back. And you just realize, although tech changes, it's not new things come along, old things go away, old things come back again. So like, I didn't quite start in the era of mainframes and punch cards, right? But we used to have big computers somewhere else that everyone else would log into. And then we had the desktop PC revolution, and I got my PC out of a skip and all that stuff. And then we went back and we said everything's in the cloud again. And it's just the same as mainframes, except it's called cloud and no one quite knows what it means. And I'm sure we'll transfer and we'll have people saying, "Oh, I don't want to send my I don't want to send my data off to the cloud because I really want that." And we'll have bringing their stuff back on premise again, and then it'll change again. I guess I've become a lot less worried about chasing the latest fad,
Yeah.
And just recognizing like it's just a wave of technology over time.
Nice. Okay. So look, going to the point where you mentioned that you've always I mean your role sort of now encompasses, I guess, like you said, sort of by finding, I guess, sort of new technology, new products, and how to make your team more successful, right? So going down that route, then I guess from your point of view, what's what's the definition of a sort of a truly successful sort of engineering team? I guess what does that look like in your eyes?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think when I first started, a really good team was full of people who could crank out code, solve the hardest problems known to mankind, and just basically get shit done.
Mm.
And I guess as I've become a bit closer to the business side of things, that's changed. The job of software is solving someone else's problem. It doesn't matter the technology that's underneath it. The end result is, are you solving a valuable problem for someone? And I'm in a commercial company, right? A good proxy for that is, will people pay me money to get the product I'm giving them because it solves real problems for them? And I think that's my definition of what a good team is now, is they understand the thing they're building. They understand the customers that are buying it, and they understand it well enough to put themselves in the customer's shoes and think, hey, for this database project, if I imagine Bob the DBA, Bob needs these features, and we're going to implement it in a way that makes Bob happy. And one thing Redgate has, we have this value called ingenious simplicity, which is one of the company values. And that really sums up what I think good products are. They're ones where you, I guess, going back, you're old enough to remember mobile phones before Apple and all of that lot, right? So
Yeah.
back in the day, you'd have had a Nokia N95, right? It was this big brick of a phone, and it had every feature known to mankind. Had a compass, it had everything. I bet 3 people in the entire universe used the compass feature. And then around the same time, Apple bring out the iPhone, and suddenly I can just draw what I want to do. It's a complete change. I can do the same things, right? I can make phone calls and all that stuff, but the form factor's ingeniously simple to use. Just makes you able to do things you weren't able to do before. And that's what you want in software. Like, you don't want to say, wow, we've embedded AI in the product. Customers don't give a monkeys whether it's got AI in or not, right? They want to solve a real problem for it. So the question was originally like, what is a good team? Well, they're deeply understanding the problem, and they're solving it using technology in an ingeniously simple way that users resonate with.
Yeah, I feel like you have to, that simplicity is a very important part. I feel like if we see it quite often as well. I feel like there's a lot of a lot of the time people are thinking like the more the better, the more processes, the more tools. That's really not the case. If anything, you're adding, more time, more complexity into a very simple process. And I feel like, we spoke to quite a few people, and it's quite funny because a lot of sort of leaders have very similar thoughts, I guess, in the sense of, the simpler the better, less of a headache, right? Costs go down as well because obviously the more you have, it becomes more expensive as well. Yeah. Ben, what are your thoughts?
I actually think Jeff's spoken quite a lot about innovation without directly mentioning innovation. A lot of this stuff comes down to innovating. Actually, I had a question for you, Jeff, from your last point that you made. In terms of the technology revolution that's been happening for like 50 years or so now, what do you think's the what do you think's the biggest innovation in that period? What's the biggest revelation you've seen in that time frame? Because you had like in the 70s, there was some sort of like the early days of computers. Then there's been like the 90s, mobile phones, 2000s, iPhone, 2020, real new AI, modern AI. As you know, Jeff, when you were sort of at university, AI was still a thing then. Though it's been around for so
Yeah.
long, not many people actually realize that. So what's been the biggest piece of technical revolution you've seen in your life, I guess?
Yeah. I'm racking my brain to think, how can I make this answer not just be AI to sound like everyone else that you've ever spoken to ever? Um, I don't think I can. I
Is that
think
is that it's that recency bias, isn't it? It's that recency
yeah,
bias of like that's the next big thing or the big thing right now. But
I I think it probably is going to be AI. I think there's this weird law that says we sort of overestimate how valuable technology is going to be in the short term, but underestimate how valuable it will be in the long term. So there's all this talk of AI being a big bubble at the moment because it hasn't instantaneously changed the world, right? There's just so much hype about it. But when you step back and think of it just from a pure technology thing, I can talk to my computer now and it can give me back sensible responses. I can ask it to draw a reindeer on a surfboard jumping over a weasel, and it'll do that. That's absolutely bonkers,
bonkers.
right?
Yeah.
I've no idea how it's going to change the world. It's probably not going to be this big, you know, some of the hype people out there say that, we'll never need to work again. AI will do everything. It's not going to be that, but it's clearly going to have some kind of profound impact on the way stuff happens.
Do you think it's bigger than the mobile phone introduction or not?
I think it has to be, doesn't it? What do you think?
I'm not too sure. I think the mobile phone, if you think about percentage in terms of the world that has a mobile phone, especially in the UK, most people have one, if not everyone has one. And I can't personally live without my mobile phone, just for like communication, really, more than anything. So I'm not sure. I think I can live without AI, but I can't live without my phone, I would say, at the moment. But that might change in the future.
But I think that's because of like the work that we do, right? But I think if you look at like actual impact wise, I think it's AI personally, just because of like, I guess like the ceiling of where there's no real ceiling because it literally can, it's
Do
still
anything.
very much like,
Yeah.
you know, it can become whatever it will become. And it's already making lives easier in so many ways. It can detect loads of like like I was saying in previous podcasts we play futsal, so it's like indoor football basically.
Yeah.
And every time I get injured, I always ask AI what my injury is, and
Always gets it right, isn't it?
the accuracy is crazy because I go see
Yeah.
a doctor. The doctor says it's this, and basically I did my ankle a couple of months ago, and well, about not a couple of months ago now. It's about 7, 8 months ago now. And I asked AI what was wrong with it, and it said two ligaments, this and this. I went to the doctor, said exactly the same thing. So like the accuracy is crazy. Like
Yeah, yeah.
it's for me that's pretty impressive, right? To say you know you couldn't ask a mobile phone that. That's the way I would see it. Um, but yeah, anyways, Jeff, let's go back towards sort of the successful team side of things. I guess from your side, you sort of mentioned from the earlier side of your career, I guess you experienced like the leadership front and you experienced burnout. You did basically from what you were saying. So I guess from your point of view now, how do you deal with that, and how do you sort of evaluate your team's health?
That's a good question. I guess that all comes from the culture of your organization. So if I go back to the place where I had a bad time, the culture of the organization was win at all costs, and that came right the way down from the CEO to every manager above that. I think the culture at Redgate is different because it's about the needs of the customer come first, the ingenious simplicity that we do our best work in teams. I think from those principles, you create this organization or this system that values different things to the previous organization. So we're an agile software development organization. Agile's got a bit of a bad word, but it basically means we work in small chunks of work. We get feedback regularly from our customers. And every so often we take a step back and we look at what's working and we look at what's not working and we try and go a bit better. That's all agile. You can make it more complicated, but that's all it is. So in terms of team health, there's some checkpoints in there, right? I would hope that if a team is feeling that they have to work 100-hour weeks to get stuff done, that's going to come up in a retrospective. That's not something we value as a company. I don't think I've ever worked more than the 40-hour week in the 14 years I've been at Redgate. It's just not something that would happen. In terms of the team health checks, it's just that open, honest conversation. It's that if the culture allows anyone to speak up and say, hey, this isn't right, we shouldn't be doing it, you've kind of got those guardrails built into your organization from the get-go. And we do the other things, the sort of checks and balances part. We send those regular surveys out. I'm sure every organization's done this since COVID, where you just get battered with surveys left, right, and center. But we'd also talk to people and find out how they are. I know that doesn't sound very sophisticated, but I think that's an important part of sort of team dynamics and culture, is just regularly listening to people and see what they say.
The simple way.
I think
Yeah.
a lot of success comes from the failures you have in life, and especially in tech, Jeff. You can't really learn without breaking things, in my opinion, from what I've seen over like 8 years. Obviously, a lot of my good friends now are engineers, and they all tell me the same thing. Like, if you don't break anything, you're never going to learn from
Yeah.
that process. Um, a lot of startups fail, as you mentioned earlier on. You worked for a startup; they ultimately failed. I think something like 70% of companies don't make it past the first 2 years, which is a crazy stat, I think, as well. Why do you think tech teams in particular fail?
That's a really interesting question. It's like, what does fail mean?
I guess you can interpret that. Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah. I know what you mean, but it's quite a broad question. But in your opinion, I guess failing is if you build a product and it doesn't get released, that could be classed as failure. Or if you build a product and it goes down bad with the customer or all your customers and
Yeah.
you get 1-star reviews. I don't know. However you see failure, I suppose.
So I guess the way I'd reframe that, which is a cheeky way of not really answering your question, but hey, I'll do that anyway. So when we think about developing products at Redgate and the culture we've got, we're focused on delivering an awesome solution for our customers. So that means we know we've got two things for that. One thing, we've got to deeply understand the problem that they've got. And the other thing is we've got to build something that they want. You could view getting from one to the other as delivery. We are going to do this by the 1st of October or we've failed. If you take that approach to do things, you're not going to be focused on delivering something
Quality.
awesome,
Yeah.
right? You're going to deliver something. You're going to cut corners. You are going to rush to meet an arbitrary deadline. You're going to end up you're not going to solve the customer's problem in the nicest way. You're just going to get shit done until it's done, and then you're going to move on to the next thing. The other way of framing it is, I've got a customer problem here. I've got an outcome I want, and I'm going to learn all I can between here and there. And then when you think about it as a learning journey rather than an all or nothing, you don't really have failure. You have learning. So sometimes when we're building products, we think we've understood what the user problem is, and we'll work with them, and it still won't get used. Is that a failure? I don't think it is. I think we've reframed it. We have learned that actually when the customer said this and we showed them that, they actually meant something a bit different. And that's brilliant. We should celebrate that. We've failed spectacularly, and that's a good thing, because now we know what a better feature to build or a better way of doing things. So we might start doing it one way, realize it's terrible, come back out, go the other way, but that's part of the journey.
For me,
Yeah.
for me, I think it's like a little bit what we touched on before. I think like tool chaos. I think that is a big part of like a failed tech team. Over like complicating an environment. I think that's something, because at the end of the day, like again, money will get to a point where you're spending too much, and you're making lives difficult. But 100% agree with from your point of view what you're saying. Like if it doesn't get used, it's fine. You learn from it and you sort of make the product better. That's a very sort of proactive way of thinking, right? But I feel like if if you're adding, say, too many tools to try and make it better, or like spending too much money again to sort of try and make it better, it is sort of I feel like it's sort of fine lines, isn't it? I guess it's your sort of perception of what you want to do with things.
There's also failures and mistakes, right? So
Yeah, of course.
sometimes everyone does stupid things. I do a lot of stupid things, very many stupid things.
I
I
do
got
as well, Jeff, unfortunately. I do as well.
The other day, I put too much weight on the leg press at the gym, and I got stuck and had to get my son to push it out of me. That was very, very stupid. And I do lots of stupids. But I guess on the company level, sure, the company makes mistakes. We had this really famous example, actually, where we have an intern program at Redgate, and one of the interns was doing something. They thought they were on the test system. They were actually on production.
Oh no.
And they replaced every single product that we sold with a copy of the Spotify installer. Which meant pretty soon after doing that, several
Emails
people
from
started
clients.
getting
Yeah.
emails.
Oh
"Just
no.
do some work, and I've got Spotify. What on earth?" There's two ways of of dealing with that, right? The first thing is we could have taken our intern and said, thanks, bye,
But no,
see you
thanks.
later.
Yeah, go away. Yeah.
But we didn't do that, and I hope most companies didn't do that, because again, that's another opportunity for learning. But what Redgate did was we celebrated that. We have somewhere on the website you can find the book of Redgate, where we celebrated that failure. We wrote it down, we shared it with customers. We're not frightened of talking about that, because that's part of the idea of the company, right? You learn from that. And I think that's really key. Like, you want to role model the right behaviors. It's okay to go wrong. It's less okay to do the same thing twice, right? If you screw up twice in a row, that's probably a bad thing.
It means
But
you haven't listened and you haven't learned, doesn't it? So
yeah. And if you, the real problem in that silly example is we probably shouldn't have direct access to production, right? This is kind of one of the whole things of this DevOps movement. We have infrastructure as code, we have pipelines that put this in place. So that gave us an opportunity to understand that it was the system at fault. It was the system that led to this poor chap making a big cock up. And we should fix the system rather than fix the people.
I think, Jeff, most companies would have actually probably let him go, or that person go, because a lot of the corporate companies anyway, like I've obviously worked with many corporates and so has Vitas as well before, but I think they drive excellence. But in their eyes, excellence it means not making a mistake, unfortunately. As you may have seen in your last company, I'm not sure, the one you mentioned earlier on, but in our last company, me and Vitas worked together in our last business, they're a big corporate recruitment firm. And if you make a mistake or don't hit your targets, then you're like almost cut immediately, sort of thing. So I think,
Very cutthroat.
yeah, very cutthroat. Excellence is a very weird word that is different for every company, I think.
Yeah, I think it's quite rare to find a company like, I guess, like Redgate, where you sort of like you said, sort of celebrate it in the sense of like, you know, it's another lesson learned. It's something that you sort of, like you said, you know, you're not going to do it twice. it's it's you sort of you've experienced it. I guess you can explain to your customers and whatnot, and move on and learn from it.
Yeah, I can't imagine those cutthroat places. I mean, I mean, that sounds awful. Like, you're not going to get a chance to learn. I think learning is about making screw ups and then not making them again. It's pretty simple.
I
I
think
think a lot of companies
it's a
don't see
tricky
people
one.
as part of the furniture, do they? They just see them as a product. In recruitment, anyways, people are products, and if you're not delivering, then you're just out the door. If you make a mistake, you're out the door. I think in tech, it's a bit different in tech. I think a little bit these days, anyway. Particularly in the sort of sub 1,000 employee companies in tech that we work with, typically are a lot more chill about that sort of stuff. But in big corporates, it's still very similar in tech, I think, Jeff, with making mistakes, and that sort of mistake as well wouldn't go down well in many in many corporate tech firms.
I'm probably not selling myself very well to these corporate companies, which is good, because that doesn't
Don't want
like
to
to
work
work
there
there.
anymore, do you? So you're fine.
Jeff, from your side of view, I know you've been at sort of Redgate for a long time. So when I guess you've seen the company grow quite extensively since you've joined, and obviously evolve and whatnot. How have you dealt on the cultural side of things? Because obviously you've said it's you know, it's a very culturally strong business. Like, how have you, or has there been sort of any episodes of like cultural drift whilst you've grown as a business? I guess because, you know, as most companies, as you grow, it tends to happen where the culture sort of shifts a little bit, or it does sort of become a little bit, yeah, like something that you don't really tend to look at, or it changes. Has that happened since you've sort of been there?
It's definitely happened. I mean, one of the advantages of being at a company for so long is you kind of remember all the different ages of the company. So I think when I joined, there was about 300 or so people, maybe 50 or so people in total in engineering. And we had a culture that, I guess, embraced a bit of anarchy. There's only 50 developers. You can put them in a room. People can choose whatever tech they like. You can, if you want to make a decision or you want to make a change, you just run around and literally shout at everyone that, hey, this is happening, right? But as the company grows, you get to 100 or so people, it's quite hard. Some people are upstairs and you can't be bothered to walk up the stairs, right? Making change becomes harder because there's more people, they're further apart. So I guess I have seen that in Redgate, where we've had to go from being footloose and fancy free, use whatever tech you want, hack, make customers happy, go through, to having a little bit more process around that. And I remember there was one thing where we had that typical geeky argument. This was around, there were 3 version control systems in use at Redgate. It was madness, right? It's like having 3 CRMs in recruitment, I guess. Like, they're all good, and each person liked a different version control system. But for the overall good of the company, you've just got to pick one and go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now I guess, where are we now? Redgate's now a multinational company. We've got sales folk all around the world who aren't awake when our developers are awake, and we've got to build new bits in the culture to make sure we keep those folks informed. America's a humongous market. How do we join those people up with the rest of the business? And as the customers that we've sold to have gone from being, initially we used to just sell to individual developers, and now we sell to these massive Fortune 500 humongous companies, all of those folks. And when they buy a bit of software, they want to trust the vendor they're working with. They want to know that they've got documented policies and procedures for doing this, that, or the other. They want to trust their data with us. So we've grown new legal requirements, new regulatory requirements, and we've had to adapt our culture so that we do the right thing, but we do it in a way that's sympathetic to Redgate's culture. So I guess, what's an example of that? I guess your big corporate companies, they might solve this problem by saying, okay, before we make any changes to the database, we're going to put 3 highly paid managers in a room who've never been near tech before. They're going to talk about the risks and rewards, a change advisory board. They're going to choose the decisions, right? All decisions have to flow to the top in order to be approved. Whereas with Redgate, we tried to preserve our culture. We've said the people closest to the problem are the best place to make a decision. And we've said those people should write down why they've made a decision. So it's 2 different approaches. So when an auditor comes and looks at Redgate, what they'll find is a lot of team-based decisions and the rationale behind it. And each team will have their own process for doing that. But your big corporate company, what they might find is that the change advisory board hasn't minutes of meetings that have lasted 6 hours and all that bureaucracy and so on. Just 2 different approaches while we're trying to keep culture halfway sane.
Jeff, you mentioned something really interesting a second ago as part of that answer. Was you've sort of gone from a B2C model, as in selling to developers, I guess, back in the day or whenever it was, and you've gone to more of a B2B model as you've grown and scaled out. I guess, how was that transition for the team? For you as well? I'm not sure how involved you were in changing that or making that change. And the second part of the question is, was there any sort of massive sort of setbacks you had in that change, I guess, as well?
That's interesting. I guess I wasn't directly involved in any of that, but I guess the sort of the change from the engineering perspective is now we've got 2 different types of people involved. We've got the people who are using the tool, and we want to make them happy, ingenious simplicity, all that stuff I've spoken about. But now we've got another persona that we've got to consider, which is the person buying the tools. So the person buying the tools and the people that use it are often now 2 different people.
Yeah.
And they have 2 different sets of needs. Understanding that and getting that across to teams is a huge change, because sometimes you end up doing work that isn't making users happy, it's making buyers happy. And all the auditing requirements, the logging requirements, the ISO security gubbins, that doesn't really make life easier for our users. It's not directly aligned with that value of ingenious simplicity, but it does make life easier for the buyers, and it does cause them to give us money, and that's obviously
That's the point,
quite,
isn't it, in the company
yeah.
as well? So
So I think that there's a tension there we've had to navigate. I think we've got the balance about right at the moment. I think if you spoke to an engineer at Redgate, they'd make that. Any engineer at Redgate would make that distinction between the users and the buyers, and they'd start to understand the needs. And that the company, the sort of sales and marketing folks at Redgate have done a tremendous job on sort of educating the rest of the workforce on what these people, who these people are, the CTOs, how do they think, the CIOs, how do they act, what are they looking for. So it has been a change. I can't think of any huge setbacks. We've navigated the path quite well as part of it. I think we switched over to a subscription model,
nice.
and I'm sure you've seen horror stories in the press of, oh my God, I used to pay £200 and now I have to pay £100. Yeah, Adobe and everything. We didn't move quickly on that. We moved slowly. And I think in retrospect, that was a really good decision, because we could see how other companies were managing that transition and learn from them. And I think now we're into that subscription model, and I feel we haven't made the visible mistakes that some of the early adopters might have done.
I think those sort of
From yourself,
models are
Jeff, I know
great.
you mentioned those.
Oh, sorry, Vidas.
Yeah, I was going to say, Jeff, I think from what you're saying is obviously right now, not even right now, but you've always had a sort of a big focus on developer experience.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a very important part for what you guys do. I mean, what would you say are some of like the biggest sort of pain points you see in most companies on the developer sort of experience side of things? Is it like, because I know you mentioned like the offerings of like documentations and stuff that you guys are doing now. So is that something that I guess you see quite often in companies where I guess they sort of have struggles or lacking in that sort of things?
Yeah, I think it all comes back to, I guess, that a kind of cultural thing. So if you're trying to get a good developer experience, for me, it's all about feedback loops. So I make a change. I want it to go through my CI/CD system. I want it to come back green as quickly as humanly possible, so I can do the next thing. And that's a really simplistic view, because it's just me typing some code. In the real world, you've got, I don't know, 20 different teams, 20 different departments. You've got handoffs over here. You've got to talk to your database administrator to manually approve these changes. And if you want to get everyone behind a great developer experience, they've all got to buy into it. They've all got to understand that, hey, we're going to automate these changes. We're going to give you tooling that helps you, but you've got to let go a bit, right? You can't have those blocking approval approaches. You've got to put continuous integration in, right? The clue is in the name. So people have got to change their mindset from, I need to manually approve absolutely everything that goes through, to, okay, I'm going to have to automate some checks and balances. What checks and balances can I automate so that I can invest less time doing that single point of review? At Redgate, with us, I guess our core challenge is those feedback loops. So we have a product called Redgate Monitor. You'll never guess what it does. It monitors databases. The clue is in the name. But it's a huge product. It works on lots of different types of databases, lots of different types of operating systems. So if you draw out all the things it's got to be tested on, it's no surprise that testing loop can take a really, really long time. And the longer the feedback cycle is, the more likely you are to have broken something in the meantime, and then you're in trouble, because you're just sort of constantly chasing your own tail. So what we're trying to do internally is just invest in that, shift more things left so that we get earlier feedback when things go horribly wrong, so that we can deliver value faster to customers. And that always has a ripple effect, right? It's not just the developer typing code. Maybe it's the collaboration with other teams in the same area that's causing the problem. So you've got to rethink that. DevEx is hard. It's a systems problem. It's not just give a developer a tool and magic will happen. It's exactly the same with AI. I was trying not to mention AI, but it's not like you're going to give people a magic AI tool and suddenly they're going to be faster. What's going to happen is you're going to give me an AI tool. I'm going to write code quicker, but it's still going to take just as long to go through that CI/CD loop and come back and tell me it's rubbish. So what on earth is the point if I can smash out 1,000 lines of code in 30 seconds, but I still have to wait 3 days to get feedback? I might as well have just typed it in by hand the old-fashioned way, right?
From yourself, Jeff, how would you define DevOps from your point of view? How does, it's an interesting one because I feel like um, a lot of people have different sort of ideas, I guess, what DevOps is, and I still think is for some companies, I feel like they still don't really know what it is, and they just throw around the buzzword. What does DevOps means to you? I guess how would you define it if you had to?
This is where I wish I'd written some notes with something really clever on the other side of the window. I think it's just the evolution of agile. So if agile is understand problems and generate awesome solutions, DevOps adds the kind of final bit of the puzzle, which is making sure that users are still solving those problems regularly. It's all the operational concerns, and around that you've got all the rigor, making sure I can deploy those changes to customers to solve their problems without going down on Black Friday and losing millions of revenue. Make sure I can solve those user problems and audit and secure their data in transit so that we're not going to be bankrupt by the end of the week. So I see it as just supporting more of the customer journey.
Okay.
That's
Ben, how would you define DevOps? Ben.
Me?
Oh, I thought I'd waffled enough and got
Yeah,
away
Ben.
with it.
No, I said Ben. Ben, how would you define
right,
DevOps to
me.
you?
I thought I couldn't hear what you
Yeah,
said.
Ben.
How would I define DevOps?
No, I think it's lagging a little bit. I think it's breaking up a little bit.
Yeah. What was the question, Vita? Sorry, to me.
I said to you, how would you define DevOps? Throw it in
Put
your
me on the
end.
spot. Why put me on the spot for? How about you? No, I think
For me personally, I think it's a cultural thing, right? I feel like it's for DevOps to sort of actually be successful within a company. It's all sort of changing a culture of a company, of how sort of they I guess implement and process things, right? It's again, it's making things more efficient. It's making things you could say, I guess, cheaper in that sense. Is how teams work together towards a goal. I think that for me, in simple terms, I think it's changing a culture of a company to sort of align to a goal. Because obviously before when DevOps was still sort of more of a buzzword than it is now, I feel like it was very much like the developers, the ops side, and everyone sort of like misaligned, and one guy's are doing one thing, the other ones are doing the other thing, and the whole cycle takes God knows how long. So
I think it all
it's
comes down to
much,
communication. End of the day,
yeah,
isn't it? I think communication is the biggest thing in DevOps that we see when we're working with like directors or CTOs on roles for their team, DevOps engineer roles. Their main thing is just communication. So that's the main thing: collaboration, communication, and developer experience more for platform teams and DevOps teams, I'd say. But I think, that communication side, I make loads of LinkedIn posts every day about communication and how important that is. I think a lot of developers, Jeff, maybe you don't agree with me on this one, but a lot of developers generally don't have to communicate as much as DevOps engineers or platform engineers, in my eyes. Obviously, they can sit there, they can write code, they can document their stuff and send it over to the ops team, whatever. I think DevOps teams typically have to be a bit more communicative in the way they approach situations generally. What do you think,
Yeah.
Jeff, about that?
I think the age of like developers just sticking a pair of headphones on and nerding out in the corner and typing code all day, that's gone ages ago, right? I guess that's one of the things when we're trying to interview engineers at Redgate, is we are looking for that collaborative communication. So we'll ask people to think out loud in the interview, but that's because we want to understand what the thought process is going through. I think that same mindset is important for both the operational side of the business and the development side of the business. I think it is totally about communication. If I'm writing a new feature and it's going to be quite resource intensive, I need to communicate that with the experts in ops. And actually, it's not just me tell you, it's back and forth, right? My ideal situation would be, hey, I've got a customer problem to solve. We think it's going to need lots of new hardware, configuration, whatever, some kind of operational concern. And we sit an operational guy or girl and a developer down, and they work together to solve the problem. Sometimes we can solve it with some infrastructure. Sometimes we can solve it with some code. But we should work together to find the best trade-off.
I think from that as well, then, Jeff, I mean, moving on a little bit, I guess, I know obviously, everyone, I mean, we spoke a little bit about AI already, I guess. How do you sort of, maybe yourself, like how do you sort of use that? And I guess how do you regulate, I guess, utilize AI in within sort of their sort of offerings? Is there something that you use on a regular, or is it still something?
Yeah. I've probably used AI 20 times this morning already from what I'm trying to think. I use AI as a rubber duck. You know that term where if I've got a problem and I explain it to a rubber duck, often I find myself getting a solution. I think in the old days, I'd have tapped a colleague on the shoulder or I'd have said, do you mind grabbing a coffee? I'm struggling with this.
Yeah.
And now I just bash it into ChatGPT, Claude, and it'll ask me some questions. Sometimes they'll be stupid questions. Sometimes they'll be good. And I'll sort of talk my way out of a problem. I use it an awful lot to write code. They don't really let me near the production systems anymore, which is good. But I can write prototype code with AI much quicker than I could do if I was just trying to do it. So if I want to demonstrate whether a particular architectural pattern will work, I can do that now in minutes, I guess, rather than days. That's pretty amazing. In terms of the wider Redgate, I think we're still scratching the surface, just like everyone else is. We've got folks using all sorts of AI coding assistants. And I guess you see the normal thing you see when there's a new technology out, right? There's a few people who are adopting it wholeheartedly and sort of talking about how awesome it is. There's also a significant number of people on the other side who are like, this stuff's garbage, or I'm not going to use it on ethical grounds because every time we use AI, we're burning a rainforest. And there's most people in the middle of it, I guess, just waiting sensibly to see what happens. Incidentally, our highest user of AI coding is Jakob, our CEO, is racking up an amazing spend on that. I should ask him what he's up to, but he's using AI more than more than all of our developers, in fact.
Wow. Fair enough. I
Then
think it's good for
AI?
sales as well. It's good for sales too. It's probably why.
It is good. It is good. From yourself, Jeff, I know, but you sort of mentioned as well, like you obviously like to keep up to date with the technologies, and obviously, like you said, it's just very much sort of, yeah, staying present in the market, I guess, because it's so evolving. What sort of skills do you see sort of future engineers will need with like within like a dev role or a DevOps role? What do you think is hot, I guess?
I think it's the fundamentals that are hot. Like, I think if you've been a developer for a good few years and you've built up this really wider base, learning the new hotness, that's not a challenge. I really think what matters more than anything at the moment, if I was a junior developer, I would try to learn a little about a lot. I would cast far and wide. I might be able to use AI to fill in the details, but you can't, if I need to solve a problem, I can't just ask AI to solve the problem. I need to give it a hint, use this algorithm. And if I don't know the name of that algorithm, I'm stuffed. So I think the key is learn a little about a lot. Learn to recognize when something is good or whether something's bad. you're both in the recruitment market, right? And I bet you have the ability to look at a CV from 3 foot away and know whether it's going to be a good quality CV or not, right?
Yeah,
Usually if it's
100%.
pages, and it's exactly the same with code. If you look at a bit of code from a mile back, you can often tell whether it's terrible or good. And that skill's really, really important, because when you're using AI to generate millions of lines of code, how do you know whether it's gone off the rails and just gone completely and utterly bonkers? And the only way you can know that is if you've got that kind of sense of taste. This is what good looks like. This is what bad looks like. And you can develop that by really focusing on the fundamentals.
Is there any books on that topic, Jeff? Any books, habits, philosophies that you'd recommend to, or tools as well, to for juniors to pick up on and really learn how to code?
Yeah, I'd just say read them all. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think there's one book that gives you all of it, right? There's one book will give you one particular opinion of what good looks like. Another book will give you another opinion. I think it's up to you to read voraciously, read as much as possible, understand the market, read other people's code. If the code you've written doesn't look crap when you read it again in a year's time, you haven't learned anything,
Mm.
right?
Do you think
It
books are
really
still
is
important,
important.
Jeff, as well? Do you think books are still
Sorry?
important? Do you think books are still important? Because obviously with, phones and everything, not many kids these days really read that much, do they? Let's be honest, proper books like the old days. So is there any books sorry, do you think books are still important in this 2025 era?
I hope so. Like, I think if someone spent 2 years writing their experience, 20 years of experience into a book, and you can pick it up and read 200 pages and get 20 years of wisdom, that's a pretty good deal. I might just be an old fart. Maybe I could
I
get
agree.
that
I,
from,
I agree. I don't read
right?
often, but no, I don't read often, but I read on the odd occasion, and they're just can't really beat a good book, I don't think, for learning anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine scrolling through TikTok and seeing a 10-second video that's going to teach me anything, right? I think you have to put the work in to learn the things, and that means reading books, and it also means trying things out and experimenting.
Nice, Jeff. Funny question here. So I guess from your career, I guess what's the best team you've worked for, and why?
Oh, it's definitely. I worked at a startup company in Bristol. I think I was employee number 2 or 3, and it was fantastic. I blagged my way into this job, right? The job advert said you require 10 years of experience, and I had, I think, 1. And I went down to Bristol, and I said, I'll work for free for a couple of days. And somehow I bullshitted my way into this job, right? And I was so far out of my depth, it was untrue. But the folks I was working with were brilliant. I was learning stuff every single day. Um, it felt more like working with friends constantly for that long, right? Going out for curries constantly, going out for lunch all the time, putting the work in as a team to get stuff done. It didn't go anywhere. It went horribly wrong, but we had a whale of a time getting there.
They're the
Nice,
best types,
nice.
they are.
Favorite
They're the
takeaway?
best types.
Favorite takeaway, Jeff?
Favorite takeaway, it's got to be a curry, and it has to
I
be
was gonna say.
the healthiest possible paneer curry.
Good stuff. I guess you mentioned a little bit about this already, but I guess if you was I guess starting your career all over again, I guess what advice would you give to yourself? More so for I guess sort of the people that are listening that are trying to break into the industry. What advice would you give them starting their sort of tech journey, I guess?
Yeah, it's a really different world now because it's like 100 times more competitive. I guess I had this. I joined the industry when there weren't enough computer science folks to go around, right? So I had the luxury of choice. I didn't have to grind leak code interviews for 3 hours a day to get a job. I don't know. I think it's really difficult to know what to say to the next generation. The job market is stupidly tough. I think if I was, would I even enter the tech market today? Yeah, probably that's a bit depressing, isn't it? I don't know. I think you've got to demonstrate something that stands you apart. I think with AI, there's this fantastic opportunity, right? The cloud made social media, made your Facebooks, internet search made your Googles. AI is going to make the next generation. Do you remember when the iOS first came out? Someone made Fart app, which
Mm.
made lots and lots of money, right? That opportunity exists everywhere with AI today. So I think I would say if you're trying to enter the market today, have a crack at making a startup. You will almost certainly fail, and that's okay. You'll have a great time. And when you come along to interview at the next company and they ask you a question of what's the coolest bit of tech, you'll have an answer that'll blow everyone else away. So yeah, dive in at a startup and see what happens.
I think that's very much what we basically discussed pretty much the whole podcast, right? It's failing and learning from that, and yeah, very much just continuously sort of developing and evolving your sort of career. Doesn't matter where you are in your career, if it's the start or even if you're experienced, it's the learning never stops. I feel like that's probably the best way to do it. And failing, like Ben said earlier, like it's part of the journey. I feel like you have to fail to sort of learn, I guess, and especially in tech. So I think that's really good advice.
Yeah.
I think yeah, I think starting a startup is it's an interesting way. You never know; it might kick off and you might make millions. You just never know.
You know what's
You might
you
get
know what's
lucky.
funny? You know what's funny as well? Even at like obviously like Jeff's level, even at our level, we have our own business and or whatever level you're at in terms of seniority, I think you still make mistakes. I mean, for me, this year I've made a couple of clangers that I probably look back on and think, what the hell am I doing here? We probably lost business because of it. So, you still make mistakes no matter how many years of experience you have because scenarios and situations and circumstances change and every situation is different and you can't handle everything perfectly every time. That's what I think anyway. I think, yeah, so that's my take anyway on that bit. But
I couldn't
I guess,
agree more.
yeah, we have a question, Jeff, from the last guest that we do. And then we asked you to give a question for the next guest after that. So the question from the last guest, she's called Lauren Sears. She's a sort of talent leader in the gaming space. She's asked you, what is the biggest challenge you face that is specific to your industry?
Biggest challenge specific to the industry. Gonna have to be boring and say AI again. And I think that the reason why it's the biggest challenge is you're seeing all this stuff in the media. AI is going to replace all developers within N years. This kind of thing. Salesforce making 20,000 developers redundant, and that means there's sort of pressure from the outside. What's your AI story? And then there's the approach, right? I want to learn, fail, and work out what's right, and that takes time. I can't come up with a magical AI strategy because I haven't got a Scooby Doo what's going on. Like that's the biggest challenge. Is like effectively you're being asked to predict the future by making an AI strategy and having a position on it. And the future's being rewritten every 10 seconds, right?
Yeah,
There's probably some new AI stuff that's come out while I've been on the podcast. I'm falling behind. Like it's crazy.
100%. By the way, on that, you made a really good point about Salesforce making so many thousands of people redundant this year or last year, whenever it was, Jeff. Like,
Yeah.
I see a real trend. So when a big firm like let's say Tesco or Capgemini or whoever is making the redundancies happens, when one firm does it, 10 other firms do it as well. So it was like a collective thing where these big firms are actually drowning out a lot of people out of their businesses and actually saturating the entire market. The job market's absolutely on its knees at the moment. Has been for 2 years now. So what are your thoughts on that with the sort of whole, redundancy piece with these big firms in particular, I guess?
I think it will come back around. It's just another one of these kind of waves. Eventually, folks are going to realize that, hey, this AI is good, but it's also bonkers. Like it doesn't quite work all the time, and it needs good old fashioned software engineering around it to control it. Vitas, you said you use it to diagnose you. I'm pretty sure at some point after futsal, it will convince you that you're having a heart attack or something, and you're not, because it's just gone off the rails, right?
You know, funnily enough, Jeff, when Ben uses it, it always says that he's going to die or
Yeah, it's
something.
bad.
Like it's always to such an extreme level
It ruins me.
that
Yeah.
yeah, you can't listen to everything that it says. But I feel like it's the same with anything, right? I feel like if you put it back into work perspectives, I feel like it's something you can use to support you, but you can never use it to like take your job, right? Because it still very much makes mistakes. And you know what? It's funny enough. It's like it's talking about like how AI can make a mistake, right? Like we used it last week and it made a mistake, and we saw it. We saw the mistake, and we said in the message after said you made a mistake, and it said yeah, I know. We was like, you just sent us a mistake, and you know it was a mistake,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
crazy. Like that's yeah.
So the way it's going to come back is eventually all these firms that have made folks redundant prematurely, something will go catastrophically wrong at their organization, and then things will change. They're gonna say things like, we're now gonna invest in doubling down in AI with human support, and they're gonna hire the same folks back.
There you go.
It's just swings and roundabouts.
I actually think as well with blame, I feel like if you make a mistake now, you can blame it on AI. Like any sales email you do or whatever you do in terms of product you build, oh, it wasn't my fault, it was AI. It's just easy cop
Oh
out, isn't
god.
it? Easy cop
Yeah,
out.
yeah. It's that. What's that episode of The Simpsons where they use Bart to? The Simpsons predicts everything.
They
They
Like,
do.
do. Yeah. Scary. Very scary.
yeah.
What's your question, Jeff, for the next guest? And it can be about anything, about work, about non-work related stuff, life, gym, fashion, whatever you want.
How much you can leg
What's
press.
what is the most important principle you use to run your life?
Oh wow.
Nice.
Wow.
Deep and just leave some kind of philosophical clangor there for people to walk into.
You're gonna open someone up, Jeff.
Kind of
Good
worms.
stuff. Good stuff. And Jeff, for I guess the people that are listening, where can people find you and stay in touch with yourself?
You can find stuff about Redgate, obviously at redgate.com, and I have a personal blog you can find at the domain name fffej.substack.com, which is my name backwards. I should really get a memorable domain name, shouldn't I? Interestingly, my sort of personal domain used to be, I've got a 6-letter domain called FatVat. Very proud of getting, but I can't use it for anything because it's just too embarrassing to say it out loud.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Look, it was awesome to have you, Jeff. Hope you enjoyed it as well. Yep. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
No, thanks very
Thanks,
much for
Jeff.
inviting me. Good fun.
Thanks for your time.
All right. Okay. Thanks.
Right, it's done. Stop recording, Jeff. We're clear. That was good. No, that was good, that was.